So we're here to talk about resumes and cover letters. For those of you who don't know me, I'm John Beck. I'm the Director of Career Development and Academic Advising. Very glad to see a great turnout here tonight for this event. And we're going to go through it somewhat rapidly, but if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Raise your hand, wave your hand, catch my attention. I do like interruptions and interaction. But we're going to try to cover resumes and cover letters here during this roughly 50 minutes that we have left. Before we get started, I'd like to just open us up in prayer, and then we'll get right to it. Lord, I thank you for this evening. Thank you for each of the individuals that are here tonight. I ask you to be with them, guide them, strengthen them as we're at the beginning of the semester. And Lord, some of them may be searching for opportunities, whether it's jobs or internships or leadership positions on campus. I just ask you to be with them, and may we just continue to honor and glorify you through this time. In your name, amen. So, what I'd like to say, and some of you may have heard me say this before, I think the key to your resume is maximizing the effectiveness of your resume, and that's what we're going to talk about. I want to try to help you put together a quality document that you can use. So I want you to think about this as being simply a marketing document. And some of you may be marketing leaders in this room, but I want all of you to start thinking about it. Whether you're social work or computer science or education, you're all becoming marketing majors. What are you marketing? You're marketing your abilities, your strengths, your education, your degree that you're completing right now, and your experiences. And these experiences can be paid and unpaid. Many of you do multiple leadership opportunities, service in our communities and when you're back in your homes. So there's not just one thing that you're looking to market yourself. The functions of your resume. I want you to think about it as self-inventory. Does anybody know what I mean by that? Or take a wild guess? What are your strengths? What are you good at? That's your self-inventory. What are you good at? And how can you take that and apply it toward a potential employer, a potential leadership opportunity? Think about it as an extended calling card or just an oversized business card. It's all your resume is. It's just an oversized business card. It's also going to help set the agenda for the interview. Because the employer is going to have their set questions that they're going to ask you, but they're also going to ask you questions based on your resume. So you really need to know your resume. And that's where I would highly suggest and recommend that you don't have somebody else do it for you. Don't use a resume service or pay somebody to type it or have mom and dad do it. I think it's really important that you need to do it because you need to be able to answer those questions. Memory joggers, and particularly when I work with upperclassmen, they go, oh, I forgot I did this and I forgot I did that. How much all of you do while you're here. Sometimes this resume becomes a memory jogger. And then the most important function of your resume is not to get the job. As much as you want it to be, I want to encourage you, and even though our economy is improving, the most important function of your resume is not to get the job. You want to get the interview. Get your foot in the door. If you can get your foot in the door, the interview should get you the job. So I want to really encourage you to think about using your resume to just get your foot in the door. Desirable characteristics. This has not changed in the 12 years that I've been doing career development. Through the NACE, National Association of Colleges and Employers survey, every year, and even more so these last few years, the number one desirable characteristic that employers say, honesty. Particularly because right now many people have tried to exaggerate and embellish their experiences or even their educations. So honesty is crucial. Positive. And right now, it is still an employer's market. And so they can be very selective in who they want to hire. So I think it's very important that you be positive. Even though it may have been the worst summer experience that you've ever had, and it didn't meet your goals and your expectations, no employer wants to hire a negative name. You've got to be positive. Brief and easy to skim. At this point in the economy, prior to our recession, we used to say, could you survive a 30-second scam? In today's market, and as we saw in a survey about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, most employers were spending between 7 to 10 seconds when looking at their resumes initially. 7 to 10 seconds is all you have. So that goes all the way back to what I said in that very first slide. Comes back to marketing. And how are you presenting yourself? And maybe because the economy is improving, we might be up to more like 12 seconds, but it's not that much more time. And then without error, proofread, proofread, proofread. Because a typo could cost you the job immediately. It happened to me after graduate school. Second to last line, second word, misspelled, but it was personnel. I had A-L, not E-L. Fortunately, I had the employer tell me the typo, but Microsoft Word did not catch the word. Why? Because it was spelled correctly. But it did cost me getting that position. So it's important to also proofread your resume. Essential components. And this is very funny for me to remind individuals, but I have worked with people who have forgotten to put their names on their resume. You need your name on the resume. Also, an address, whether it's your current address here at school or your permanent address at home, or you can put both. A phone number. Most of you are going to probably use your cell phones. If when I called your cell phones right now, just to step aside for a second, if I called your cell phone right now, I'm assuming most of them are off or on vibrate at least. But what is your voicemail greeting says? What does it say right now? Is it something that's fun? Or is it something that could be misinterpreted incorrectly? Or is it something that's professional? I don't want to put one of our seniors on the spot, but I was just thinking, you're looking for an opportunity. What does your voicemail greeting say? Because I do know of employers who have hung up based on a voicemail greeting. So that is a crucial little element, but it could cost you the job. Also your emails. If you're not going to use your Spring Arbor email and use a Yahoo or a Gmail, or I'll age you like me, it's a Hotmail. If you're using something outside of your Spring Arbor email, what is it? Is it something that's professional? Or is it something that's more of a nickname? Or a hockey team? Or something that's completely inappropriate? And I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. I won't give you any examples. But I do know of employers who have not followed up based on an email address as well. To give you a quick tip about your Spring Arbor email, most of you have like JO and then 6 numbers at arbor.edu, right? Did you know you also have an alias? Lizzie, so Elizabeth, last name Sherba. So I'm giving out her email right now. Elizabeth.Sherba@arbor.edu. Much more professional than using EL and 6 numbers. So all of you have an alias, whether you do that or not. So I would encourage you to use that email. Your education. Oddly enough, I have worked with individuals who did not put their education on their resumes. If you're a freshman, and I know we have a few in the room, and if you're a freshman, you can put your high school on there. I want to encourage you not to put your high school on your resumes, and just focus on your undergraduate degree at Spring Arbor University. If you're particularly a junior or senior, definitely no high school on your resume at this point. Why? As an employer, it's illegal for me to ask you when you graduated from high school. Leads to age discrimination. I can ask you what was the last grade you completed, but I cannot ask you when you graduated. And I've worked with individuals who graduated high school in 1974. I'm like, so you're 50-some years old. And he's like, how do you know? Well, they told me. So it's important to think about that. And then your experiences. Again, for our freshmen in the room, you can use your experiences, because right now that is what you have. Unless you've been very involved in the Spring Arbor community in these last 5 months or so, I definitely would highlight that information on your resume if you're applying for a leadership position. But if you're a junior or senior, there really should be no high school type of experiences on your resume. And we really want to focus on what you've done since you graduated from high school. I'll take that opportunity now to encourage our freshmen at this point. I want to encourage you to start building those kind of experiences, so when you are a junior and senior, you have more to pull from. Your heading. Some of these are these are optional. The objective. It's a goal, it's a purpose to your resume. It is an optional heading, and I'll give you an example of one of those here later on when we look at a sample resume. Summary of qualifications or skills, so profile summary. I think I saw on a senior's resume back in the fall, it said professional highlights. There's many different ways that you could use that type of a heading. Volunteer experiences. Work with an employer back in the fall. One of the things that they looked at was not just your qualifications and what their major was. They were looking to see what kind of community service they were involved in. So again, think about your volunteering. Relevant coursework. Notice I didn't say your entire transcript. Don't want to see every course you took. But 3 to 6 relevant courses that would apply to the position you're applying for. So think about those, and particularly your upper levels. And also don't say Business 161. I don't know what that is as an employer. But if you said Intro to Business or Microcomputers, I think it is, that sounds much better. And particularly our upper level courses, when you're able to say methods and procedures of counseling rather than Site 422. Work experiences, so particularly other things that you may have had, off-campus jobs, summer experiences, even seasonal work is appropriate to put on your resume, because it shows me as an employer all the different skills that you could bring into it. You may feel like, I don't want to put that 3-month summer job I had at McDonald's on my resume, but as an employer, this shows me your ability to work with customer service, work in a fast-paced environment. Even though it might have been the worst experience that you had, you can still take some transferable skills and transferable experiences from that position. And then extracurriculars. Work in what sense? Yeah, and if I don't address it, let's bring it back. Extracurriculars. Again, mission trips, even being involved in intramurals here on campus if you're not an athlete. Intramurals, it still shows that athletic side to you. There's a number of different things you can do, drama club, and I'm trying to think of other things so quickly off the top of my head, but you know where I'm going with it. There's plenty of opportunities to volunteer and get involved here on campus. Additional headings, again, bring back these experiences being work or volunteer. Internships. Many of our majors here require a practicum or an internship. That's something you definitely want to put on your list. Achievements, leadership, again, RH, PA, student government, you guys. I can't even think, SLAs. We have plenty of leadership opportunities here on campus. Achievements and honors and award, professional associations. Some of you may be social work. You have an opportunity to be involved as a member in the Michigan Student Social Worker organization. looks great on a resume because it just shows me you're investing in your profession. Or if you're video broadcasting, be part of the Michigan Association of Broadcasters for about $30 a year. You get full membership benefits that once you graduate and are in that profession, it's going to run you about $150 to be a member. So take advantage of those student membership rates. Training and professional development. Twice a year, I know the Michigan Association of Broadcasters has 2 conferences that they have. Put those things on your resume. We have some students that are rec leaders, and then part of the student recreation organization here at the state level. Looks great on their resume that she was first a volunteer, and now she's actually a Spring Arbor student. She's actually the president of that organization for students, so it looks great on your resume. And anything else, there are so many other titles and subject areas that you can add to your resume. But at this point, logistically, your career, and notice I call this your career. I want all of you to start thinking about this. This is your job as being a student. And whether you're a freshman or a senior, this is your career. And if you're a senior, get ready to transition here in a few months. But this is your job right now as being a student. So I want you to focus on those relevant experiences and skills. And I think that's one of my key words that I talk about on any resume. Relevant skills. I don't want to see a lot of things that's not necessarily relevant to the position I'm applying for. Because remember, 7, 10, maybe 12 seconds. If it's not relevant, it's off the pot. Again, easy to read, pleasing to the eye. So use approximately 1-inch margins. Whatever you do at the top, do the same at the bottom, left, right. Just keep it consistent. You can go down to about 1/2 inch on the left and right, and the top and the bottom, but be consistent in your formatting and margins. 10 to 12 point font for the body of your resume. Why would I recommend Times or Arial? Does anybody know why I would say those 2 fonts over the plethora of fonts that are available on your computer? Anybody know why?
They look good, clean, and professional.
But you're halfway there. They are clean and professional. That's a key word I'm looking for.
The most common one used?
Most common on your computer. I call them universal fonts. Because if you use what I would call, now I just forgot what I usually call them, but any of those other fonts, I don't have that font on my computer. It's going to then change it to whatever my default font is on my computer, and it now could change the complete appearance of your resume. And so those 2 fonts are safe, and just maybe a little boring, but they are safe fonts on every computer. And then your name, everyone has, well, I say that's the body of your resume. What about your name? Your name could be 16, 18, 21 point bold. That's a little different than the body of your resume. Short bulleted lists, no paragraphs when describing your accomplishments. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't want to know what your responsibilities were as you were working at McDonald's. I want to know, what did you accomplish while working at McDonald's? That makes it more relevant to me as well. And then consistency. So my 2 key words, relevant, consistent. And consistent meaning bolding, underlining, capitalization, abbreviations. And I don't mean to pick on any of our Ohio students that may be in the room, but it's very common when I see my resume, when I look at resumes, an individual from Ohio will type out Ohio and then abbreviate Michigan. Be consistent. Same with talking about months. Sometimes I'll see them spelled out, sometimes I'll see them abbreviated. What if you were applying for an editing position at a magazine or a newspaper? That may cost you the running because I'm looking for attention to detail. And then have a minimum of 2 people read every word on your page. Go back to my story when I talked about my resume. That's the same resume I used when I applied and graduated from my graduate program. And and I had a capstone committee of 5 people on none of those 5 people caught that typo. So when you have somebody review your resume, make sure they actually look at every word. Because I don't want you to have the experience that I have. Try not to keep it nice. Action verbs. Sometimes called buzzwords or keywords. So, I know we have some social workers in the room, some business. What other majors do we have in here? Psychology. So, the reason I'm picking up majors is the reason I'm doing that is because when you go to apply for a position, you're going to use keywords that are specific to your industry. So, if you're thinking about being an accountant, you're going to use words probably like tabulated, analyzed, counted, or counted, I should say. If you're going to be a teacher, instructed, taught, led. Not that you can do that as an accountant, but it shows you the difference. So in your industry, you're going to use different keywords based on your industry. I have a much better list on the career development website that you can download, but it's full of these action verbs. But you really want to pick out keywords that are specific to your industry. You're applying for a leadership position here on campus. Again, using those kind of leadership keywords will probably help your resume get recognized a little bit more. So some do's. Choose appropriate paper and color. I always get asked, well, should I use resume paper or not? Especially if it's a position that you're applying for on campus or you're mailing your resume in for. Yes. And there's so many different choices you can use for resume paper. Whether it's blues, black, there's some grays, there's some purples, there's marble, there's white actually. But I am not a big fan of the colors. My preference tends to be ivory. I didn't bring my sample with me, but ivory tends to be a very neutral, easy to read, pleasing to the eye resume paper. Most of our offices are going to be fluorescent white paper as you're taking notes. When the light hits that white paper, it bounces right up into your eyes. Ivory tends to absorb the light, which might keep the reader actually going. It's a subtle little thing, but you never know how it could impact the reader. You can buy 100 sheets of that at Walmart for roughly $9 a box. You can pay about $13 at our office supply stores. Downstairs in the career development office, we do sell 10 sheets for $1. But it's a 24-pound cotton linen paper. I think it really does give it a nice touch. Type is clear and error-free. And what I really mean there too is also some of us, we don't have the luxury of having laser printers at home or in our rooms. So you might use your inkjet printer. I would encourage you that if it's a resume you're submitting for a position that you really want, you need to change that setting to best or fine. So it goes slower over the page, it sprays more ink on that page, but that black is going to come out more crisp and clean. Consistent layout and composition, as we already talked about earlier, your margins and your font sizes. Proofread. I'm going to drive that home if you get sick of it, but I just think it's really important that you does those errors. And then white space. If you're using 10-point times font for your body and you're using half-inch margins, we probably want to take a look at what you have on that page, and is it too much, and can we delete and consolidate? Some don'ts. I would strongly encourage you, don't use a photograph. You're not applying to be a model, and if you are, or an actor, that's a completely different type of resume. But on this current resume that you're applying for, no photographs. And no clip art, I should actually add to that. And I don't want to pick on our teachers, but this happens very frequently in education. They'll love to put a red apple in the corner or a pencil border. You're not applying to show us your graphic ability. And then as part of the search committee, I'm going to review your resume, but maybe there's a search committee and I'm going to photocopy your resume for the search committee. Well, what's that big red apple going to look like next? A big black splotch on that copy. Probably isn't going to look as attractive. So just want to encourage you, stay away from photographs, stay away from clip art. And then probably goes with the third point about the colored ink. Again, don't print color, it's not a circus ad. Your resume, and again, that could discount your qualifications right away. Folder or binder. What we said earlier, 7 to 12 seconds. So if you put it in a folder or binder, well, that's going to take me 7 seconds just to open it. It could sink to the bottom of the stack like the Titanic. So at this point, make it simple. Copier or thin paper, and again, that would be more for somebody you're actually submitting a physical resume for an opportunity. If it's something you're emailing or applying for a position online, you won't worry about it. And then personal information. This is going to include your age, which we've already talked about. Marital status, it's not Facebook. I don't need to know your status. Religious affiliations. Now, one discrepancy or one exception would be, let's say you're a teacher and you're applying for a position at Jackson Christian School. They can answer you what your religious affiliations are because they are a private nonprofit. But if it's a large Fortune 500 company, don't necessarily need to share that information. You have to think about what is relevant. And then salary information, unless they request it. But even if they do request what your salary expectations are, I never put it on the resume. I've never found a good way to do it on a resume. I usually bring that into a cover letter. But don't disregard it. If they're asking for that information and you don't answer the question, again, it could take you out of the running because you didn't follow instructions. So let's get to the nuts and bolts and show you some samples. So there are 3 different styles and 4 different formats. The first style is what we call a reverse chronological, or sometimes just called a chronological resume. But it's a reverse chronological, and under each of your headings, this is most commonly used in the United States. It's especially most commonly used by college students. But in each of your sections, you're going to start with your most recent experience and work backwards. And then your next section, it could be leadership, and you're going to work backwards, and volunteer, and you're going to work with your most recent and work backwards. Hence, the reverse chronological. And again, you're going to use bulleted examples to describe your accomplishments and outcomes. Think about it that way. That's what employers are thinking. Even if it's a nonprofit, what did you accomplish and how is it relevant to me? So here's a brief sample of a resume. Again, please give a bit of judgment on this one because the samples are blown up just for resume purposes. They don't have margins. But contact information at the top. Very simple, very easy to read. Education. One of the things I forgot to mention earlier is your cross-cultural. That is definitely a great starting point. So, put that on your resume, particularly if you're applying for a position and you know you're going on an interim trip or a May trip. You can say planned participation in. And let them know if you've done a semester abroad or planning to do a semester abroad. That might be a bullet under your education, or it can be its own heading altogether. It's a great starting point to talk with employers. GPAs. Generally, I recommend that if you have a minimum of a 3.0, but even a 3.2 cumulative and higher, you can put that on your resume. If it's below that, you don't have to put it on your resume, but also keep in mind who, if the employer says you have to have a 3.5 to apply, They're meaning your cumulative, not your major. They're looking at your cumulative, and if you don't have it, you have to disclose what your current GPA is, but be pre-prepared knowing you don't meet that qualification. Also, I would encourage you, if it's a 3.5, slash 4.0. Be consistent with that. Let them know, because we do have a few schools that are on a 5-point scale. So I think it's important to put a 4.0 on. Then you bring in your internships, what they accomplished there, and then they have some other experiences and what they accomplished there. See, the dates are out here on the right-hand side. That tends to be a preference of mine. Don't have to do that. You're going to see it throughout my samples, but you do want to put the dates on there somehow. This is just a format that I started using at the graduate school because it sort of doesn't put as much emphasis on your dates, and it sort of tends to be, it's there, but it's not there. Here's a business one. See, the contact information is a little different than the first one. All done in one line rather than 2 lines for the contact. Brings in their education. They had their leadership opportunities here on campus, and again, what they accomplished, their work, and then some related experiences. But very simple, but easy to read. The other thing that I forgot to say on the don't, so I encourage you, don't use a template. Don't use the resume wizards that Bill Gates provides on Microsoft Word. Why? Anybody want to guess?
Everybody sees them.
There are tons of them out there, and recruiters can spot those things a mile away. And you could be one of the most well-qualified candidates for the position, but a resume template, it shows me you didn't put any time and effort into this document. Now, what I do put in a small disclaimer on it. If you've never created a resume and you need to get started, use the wizard, use that template, get something on paper, and then take that document and start all over in a blank Word document and make it your own. Because I'd much rather see DJ on that piece of paper than Bill Gates' resume sample. That's what I think is important about a resume. I want to see you on that piece of paper. The next style is what we call a functional, or sometimes called a skills resume. This puts more emphasis on your experiences, your skills, rather than who you work for and the dates. This is great for career changers, which some of you are going to be seniors and you're going to be making your career change here shortly. But this is really popular also, I think, with in networking or career fairs. Because again, it puts more emphasis on what you accomplish. So, here is the same resume that we saw in that very first chronological resume. Same one, but it puts more emphasis on their experiences and it lumps it all together. Now, the other beauty to this resume format is these experiences do not have to stay in chronological order now. You can mix them up. But what if you get this great experience, but it was 2 or 3 jobs ago? Well, now you can move that up the list and make it more relevant. Another format that you can see is taking this list and put it into 2 or 3 groupings. So this is my communication skills. Here's my leadership experience. Here's my office administration skills. I don't know. Just trying to throw out examples, but you can look at those and sort of group those into themes. And so you've had 2 or 3 different sections for this type of resume. We have one faculty member here on campus, one of our psychology professors. He's a big fan of more of a functional resume. So here's another format. This one has both, a current address as well as the permanent home address. Here they have it on this education section. We might have some of you that maybe transferred to Spring Arbor University. You don't have to put the institution you transferred on your resume, but there is some value. Even if you received an associate's degree from that institution, your bachelor's degree is going to trump that. But why would there could be some plus to using the school you transferred from on your resume? Let's say you do want to go back to Marquette and look for an opportunity. It shows some investment back in that community. So there can be some plus to your resume and using that. Here, this is an accounting resume. They have just all the different, an accountant does very similar work at each of their positions. So I just lumped them together and talked about those experiences, who they worked for, and then some related experiences at the bottom. Very simple and easy to read. The third format style is what we call a combination resume. And you can do your combination resume in two different types, a functional and a chronological. So, and this format has gained a tremendous amount of traction, especially through this economy in the last 3 years with employers. They really have become connected to a combination resume. And what it does is right there at the top, one of those optional headings I talked about earlier was the summary of qualifications or profile summary. 3 to 6 bulleted statements. What sets you apart from another candidate for the same position? So now you can look at all your experiences, all your strengths, all your skills in a big picture. And how is it relevant to that potential employer? How you can make yourself more marketable? It could be language skills. It could be time management, personality, communication skills, better than I'm doing right now. But it also can be, it doesn't have to be quantitative kind of skills. It can be quality kind of skills as well. Proven ability to work effectively in a fast-paced environment. So you can think outside of the box. Who you are is a big thing. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier in one of those earlier slides. What are your strengths? What are you good at? And you can bring that out to your resume. You can see the rest of it tends to be a chronological resume with education and their experiences and their leadership. At the top, next one. The next one, this is more another one of the combination formats. You can see at the top, this one does have an objective. If you do put an objective, there's two great thoughts about an objective. To me, I like objectives. Even if they're broad and vague, I like objectives because it gives me as the reader, as an employer, what you're looking for. But some of my colleagues will say, well, if it's broad and vague, don't put it in at all. Because all it's doing is wasting space. Sometimes you'll see it if you do upload your resume onto some job boards. And you wonder why you're getting calls or emails about selling knives or doing some other kind of marketing. It's because they don't know what you're looking to do. So that's why I go back to that philosophy about putting an objective. Now, if you're applying for a specific position, let's say to be an RA, you're going to do a leadership resume. To obtain, I like the word obtain versus seeking and desire. To me, those are fluffy words. But you don't want to say want. A little too aggressive. Obtain, it's a goal, it's an action. To obtain an RA, resident assistant position at Spring Arbor University. So as a reader, I know exactly what you're looking for. On this one, it says to obtain the leadership position with utilizing my problem-solving, decision-making, and interpersonal skills as a team member of the action agency. Still a little broad, but yet identify the specific employer. So, I think to write a quality objective is similar to being an athlete. It does take practice. To hit a golf ball straight, it's important many times. We can't all be Tiger Woods and just get out there and hit that ball. That takes practice. So I think a great resume focuses on your strengths and accomplishments. Also, don't forget about your relevant experiences that you're doing coursework in your classes. I know psych students, I know some of our business students, some of your classes, you're writing significant research papers. Don't discount that, especially if you're thinking about applying for graduate schools. That kind of information really does make you more marketable for admissions. I think a great resume shows your ability to learn and accept challenge and how you're going to transfer that into a new career field. Questions, thoughts about resumes? DJ.
Okay, I have a few questions.
A few questions.
Yeah, but I will put it down. All right. Okay, you already answered that. Never mind. Okay, you said bullet points and stuff like that. And in some of those resumes, I saw objectives, like it's a paragraph, and then does it depend on how many sentences is too many sentences for a
Yeah.
paragraph?
I think the objective, the question is how long is too long on some of these, the bullets in your accomplishments? I think that the objective is a little different than the accomplishment statements, but your objective will be typically one sentence. Can be more of a phrase, and you'll simply write to the point to obtain the caseworker position with the Department of Home Social Services. It can be something really simple. But, like this one, I want to add a little bit more. Why? I want you to think about the opposite of the UPS motto. Does anybody know what the UPS motto is? No. What can Brown do for you? You need to turn that around. What are you going to do for Brown? Because that's why they're hiring you. And that's what they're doing in this objective. They're trying to show what they can do for the action agency. Don't have to do this, but I think it makes it a more powerful objective. Now, when you come down into your accomplishment statements, they don't have to be complete sentences. In fact, sometimes I encourage you don't even put a period at the end. Why? Because then Microsoft Word isn't underlining you with red or green because it's not a complete sentences, and it helps you make sure you do catch any typos. But sometimes I encourage you don't put periods at the end, so it makes it easier to read it. But they are tend to be short bulleted statements, no paragraphs. Why? Paragraphs take more time and effort to read. And right now, it's an employer's market. You want to keep it easy to read, quick to read. Does that help? Questions?
Okay, what if you have, like, I'm a communications major, so I have like a blog kind of
Yeah.
press.
Yeah.
Where and how do I put that up into my resume? Do I put that in cover letter or?
You can put it into your cover letter. That's a great place. Sometimes you can even bring it into your contact information, depending on the setup of your header. You know, you could put your blog address right there in the middle of your contact information, or bring it into your summary section. I have a student who's a video broadcasting student, and he has some of his demo reels uploaded on YouTube. He made it a whole section. I'm trying to remember what he called it, but he has it listed of what his channel is on YouTube, and just a couple of quick descriptions about what they'll find on YouTube if they look at those videos. So that's another way you could approach it from your blog. Does that help? I need to bring his resume in here because he's worked really hard on that resume to be a great sample. Other questions, comments, thoughts about resume?
You have a really great experience from high school, like really
From how long ago? I'm going to put you
senior
on.
year of high school.
And you are now currently junior. Ooh.
And it looked like, okay, for instance, I've applied for like office job before, and I had an internship in high school with State Farm as an IT like tech intern.
Right.
And the job description like really matched the
Yeah.
description of the.
I would probably encourage you to bring it into a format. I typically would tell someone who does have a great high school experience, but now you're a junior or senior, consider a combination format, but that way you can bring it into this without having to identify a year. That's the only thing to think about it. Because you put a year on it, and you immediately know, I can relate back to high school and sort of figure out your age. I know some of you are thinking, well, it's not a big deal because most college students are 18 to 22. I went back to college when I was older, I was 27, graduated when I was 30. But you won't necessarily know that based on looking at my resume. So that's the only disadvantage. Or can you work that kind of experience into a cover letter as well? There's a couple of strategies to work around that. High school experience, you're a junior or senior in college. Again, it's all comes back to marketing and how you want to think about a commercial. You don't always learn everything about the product in that commercial. You get the glossy, the high points, right? Other questions or comments? AJ.
Last one, I promise. Okay. You said you don't want like the weird things in your resume and stuff like that, but what if I've been like coordinator and supervisor of vacation Bible school at my church for like every summer. So how would I put that in there? Do you want me coordinator of VBS and then VBS, vacation Bible school, so that's kind of like.
Well, I think it also is going to come back to, the question was, is how do you get work around? Because you're college students at a Christian university,
Yeah.
you are going to have multiple religious components to your resume or opportunities. I think one, you have to think about who it is you're applying for, and if that's an environment that may not be very receptive to a faith-based individual, that may not be the right place for you. Also, I think it isn't how you present yourself, and is that the first thing you're putting on your resume, or is it sort of blended in with the other parts? I don't want to say to have you hide your faith and what your activities, but you do have to think about who your audience is. But I mean, those are great leadership opportunities, and you've been doing it while you've been in college. So I think there is a way to bring that into community involvement and bringing it in such a way. So
Yeah.
I didn't directly answer that question, but I think it is unique for each of you in the positions you're applying for. Questions, comments, thoughts?
What about short-term work experience, like you did something that is relevant but it was only for a weekend or something like that? Would you include that as an experience, or you think you're paid for it, but you include it as an experience or like a job?
Oh, that's a good question. Short-term opportunities, whether it's a weekend or a month type of opportunities. Now I'm trying to think of how I would do that on your resume. I'd have to see the rest of your resume to how I would blend that in there. I've worked with an individual who's got seasonal, so like when he was home for Christmas, he worked at Penny's for 3 weeks, and then he doesn't go back until spring break or whenever. So those are seasonal opportunities. But trying to think of how you would do.
Maybe another question would be, what would be like the length of time working at some place to be worth mentioning, like absolutely worth mentioning as a job?
You might be able to just blend it all in one, so you can say you had multiple opportunities in environments or work environments, including blah blah blah. That might be one way to get work around that. Not to say again, you have to create something as to cover everything up. We have about 5 or so minutes to wrap this up. I want to quickly show you about cover letters. Letter writing. The purpose of a cover letter is to introduce yourself, try to elicit some interest in you. Now, 9 times out of 10, an employer is going to do this: cover letter, resume, and they're not even going to look at your cover letter. However, there are employers who won't even look at your resume unless it does include a cover letter. And I've had students share with me whose mom worked in human resources, and she said just that. We won't look at a resume unless they include a cover letter. And I said, well, the postings, if they ask for it, no. They're looking to see if you take the time and effort to write one. So my general rule of thumb is you should always include a cover letter, no matter if they require it or not. And you want to highlight 2 or 3 relevant and exceptional, as they say here, skills to that employer. So you're going to pull things from your resume. And again, show interest in that organization because they're looking at that. It should be flawless, one page. Big thing that I saw in many resumes, I looked at a senior seminar from last fall, 2 senior seminars in one class. Same, whatever margins you use on your resume, use the same margins on the cover letter. Whatever fonts you use on, if you use the 10-point times, use the 10-point times font on your cover letter. They should mirror each other. They're a consistent document. Use your own words. You want to try to be natural. Try not to sound like a book, but you do want to show enthusiasm for that opportunity. And research that organization. How is this appeal to them? And why are you the right candidate for that position? So sometimes they're also called application letters rather than cover letters. But again, it's written more of a business format. You're going to have your contact information at the top. Notice it's not the same header that you had on your resume. It's just your mailing address and the date you're mailing it, the address to the potential employer, dear Ms. Nelson. Then 1 to 2 sentences opening. The meat of your cover letter is going to be that second paragraph. That's usually going to be 4 to 6 sentences. Why are you qualified for this position? In May 2014, I will be graduating from Spring Arbor University with a bachelor's in something. So, again, tell them why you're qualified. The last sentence of your paragraph of your resume should be 2 to 3 sentences, or your cover letter. Again, express your interest in the position, and please contact me at phone number and email to discuss my qualifications. That's where you bring it in. Most people like to put it at the top. So the last thing I put in the cover letter. So that employer, it says, call me. So, and then sincerely, your name, and then if you're emailing it to them, you only need 1 return, type your name. If you're actually going to mail this or physically drop it off to them, you want 2 returns so you can sign your name. There are sample cover letters on the career development website, www.arbor.edu/career. Click on students and there'll be a link to the resumes and cover letters. There are also many other types of resumes, cover letters, and we'll work on getting this on the career development website as well. There's prospecting letters. This would be a letter you're using for positions that's not posted, and you're just trying to, like prospecting for gold. You're trying to see if you can, generate some interest in that position. It looks very similar. There's networking letters, thank you letters. Thank you letters are important, particularly for, let's say you do get an interview. Thank them for the opportunity afterwards. And if they actually offer you the position. There is what we call an acceptance letter. Most people don't follow through these kind of things, but just imagine what kind of impression you would make if you did use some of these type of letters. Hopefully none of you would do this, but there is a withdrawal letter. Maybe you've applied for 3 different positions and you've taken one. It is proper to email or send this letter to the employer so they know that you're withdrawing your application for the position. And then there is what we call a rejection letter. And so they turned you down for a position. There is a letter that you can write them that says, thank you, appreciate the opportunity, because you don't want to burn any bridges. That employer that told me about that typo that was on my resume, flash forward about 5 years later after that experience, he and I are now working in career development, and now we are both colleagues working at different universities, but we're both directors. So it's important to never burn a bridge because you never know how you could become full circle. So again, just engaging that reader, but also keeping it short, sweet, and right to the point. So questions? I know that was probably the fastest I've ever talked about letters. There are some great samples on the career development website.
how do you usually address like these kind of cover letters? Like dear is usually like normal.
Dear Ms., unless you know positive they're married, it could be Ms. or Dr. So-and-so. Use their title. If you don't have a name, I really want to encourage you to research and find a name, but if you can say to whom it may concern, but it's not my favorite way to address a letter. Find a name. And there's many ways to do this. LinkedIn, the internet, there's ways you can find the director of human resources kind of name. Great question, DJ. Any other thoughts, comments? Please feel free to stop by the Career Development Office if you do have questions. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help you, and we want to help you create a quality document. So, thank you guys.